Have you ever looked at the huge landscape of modern tech careers, especially web development,
Mm.
and felt like, wow, you're standing at the bottom of this enormous mountain? So many paths, right? So many tools, languages, frameworks. It can honestly feel pretty overwhelming, just figuring out where to even start your climb. Well, today, you're in luck. Our mission here on the deep dive is really to cut through all that noise. We're going deep into the fascinating and, yeah, constantly changing world of becoming a full stack web developer. Looking ahead to 2025, and this isn't just a basic flyby. We've gathered a ton of great info, and we're giving you a comprehensive roadmap, distilled down into actionable, digestible insights. Think of it as like a shortcut, a way to understand this complex landscape and give you that strategic edge you need to navigate it successfully. We'll start with the foundational base camps, then journey through the front end and back end trails, which can get pretty intricate. From there, we'll tackle the really crucial summit deployment, explore essential modern practices, and finally look at what it really takes to stay current and get that vital hands-on experience. Consider this your expert guide up that mountain.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating about this roadmap, I think, is how clearly it maps out that progression. You go from these fundamental concepts all the way to advanced deployment strategies. Our goal today is to connect those dots for you, highlighting not just what you need to learn, but really why each piece matters for building solid real-world applications, apps that, stand out.
Okay, so if we're climbing this mountain, where do we even begin? What's step one? Our analysis keeps pointing back to the absolute basics, the bedrock. First up, HTML. It sounds simple, maybe, but it's not just markup. It's your structure, the actual skeleton of any web page. It defines everything, simple text, complex layouts, all of it. It's literally the structure. Then you layer on CSS. Now this is where the artistry comes in, how your page looks, the colors, fonts, and crucially how it adapts. Responsive design, right? Making it work on phones, tablets, desktops. Without good CSS, all that structure is just, well, plain text. And finally, JavaScript. This is the magic. It brings your site to life. Interactivity, dynamic stuff, whether it's running in the browser or even on the server. Think of these three HTML, CSS, JavaScript as the absolute core. You really have to master them before moving on.
hmm Absolutely. And once those foundations are solid, the very next thing, honestly, it's non-negotiable on any serious development path, is version control. Which raises a good question. Why is version control, specifically Git, so fundamental? I mean, it's way more than just tracking changes, though that's part of it. It's really about enabling a smooth teamwork. Collaboration is key. It gives you a safety net so you can experiment without, breaking everything permanently. It maintains a clear history, and critically, it's how you contribute to open source projects. Getting good at Git and using platforms like GitHub, genuinely essential. It helps you manage complexity and work effectively with others. That's the cornerstone of pretty much all professional software development today.
That makes total sense. It's like having a detailed logbook for your climb. You can always go back, see what changed, coordinate with others.
hmm
Okay, so with those basics locked down, we move to the front end, the part users actually see and interact with. And here we need to go beyond just basic HTML and CSS, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned modern CSS techniques, things like Flexbox and Grid. And this is where it gets really interesting for designing beautiful, adaptable sites. Flexbox is great for like one-dimensional layouts, arranging things in a row or a column. Super useful.
hmm
But CSS Grid, that's for two dimensions. It gives you incredible power for complex page structures, like a dynamic canvas for your content. And don't forget things like SCSS, the preprocessor. It streamlines styling with variables, nesting, makes things cleaner.
Definitely.
Or frameworks like Bootstrap or maybe Tailwind CSS. They give you pre-built stuff to speed things up.
Yeah.
The main goal here is making your pages look great and work perfectly on any device, phone, desktop, whatever.
And building right on top of that, the JavaScript side on the front end has evolved like crazy. It's like scaling a whole new ridge. You absolutely need to master ES6 Plus features. We're talking async await for handling things that take time, like fetching data. It makes asynchronous code feel much more, well, readable. Then there's destructuring, makes your code cleaner by letting you pull values out of arrays or objects easily. Promises help manage complex async sequences reliably, and modules are just crucial for organizing code into reusable pieces. Keeps things manageable, especially in big applications. If you connect this to the bigger picture, all these front-end tools, they're about crafting those seamless, really responsive user experiences, things that feel intuitive and fast. And crucially, yeah, you'll need to pick a modern JavaScript framework or library. Vue and Angular are definitely powerful options. But our analysis strongly points towards React for 2025. It's just got massive adoption, a huge ecosystem. React lets developers build complex UIs much more efficiently. You break everything down into reusable components, and this component model, it's a game changer. Speeds up development, makes code easier to maintain, cuts down on bugs, especially in teams. It's profound, really. Within React, you also need to get state management. Tools like Redux or maybe the built-in context API, vital for handling data flow predictably as apps get complex. And you might also look into CSS in JS libraries, things like styled components or emotion, for dynamic styling right inside your JavaScript components. Gives you more control.
All right, so we've covered the UI, that beautiful dashboard, the responsive controls of our metaphorical car. Now, let's peek behind the curtain. Go into the engine room, the back end. This is where the heavy lifting happens, serving data, managing users, all the core logic. And the roadmap points straight to server-side JavaScript, specifically Node.js. So pretty cool, right? It's a runtime, letting you use JavaScript outside the browser. So you can use the same language you learned for the front end to build powerful back-end stuff.
Exactly. Leverage that existing knowledge.
And working closely with Node.js, you'll almost certainly learn Express.js. It's the go-to Node framework. Really good for building RESTful APIs, those standard ways for your front end to talk to your back end, and for managing your server's routing. So what does this all mean? Well, if the front end is the car's dashboard and controls, the back end with Node and Express, that's the powerful engine under the hood, handling all the complex stuff you don't see, making the car actually go.
Right. And an engine needs fuel. For web apps, that fuel is data. So understanding databases is absolutely crucial, non-negotiable. We see two main types highlighted usually. The SQL databases like PostgreSQL or MySQL, great for structured relational data when consistency and strict relationships matter most. And then NoSQL databases like MongoDB. They offer more flexibility, better for unstructured or semi-structured data, often preferred for like faster development cycles or handling huge volumes of buried data. But it's not just about picking one. You have to grasp how to do the standard CRU'd operations: create, read, update, delete. Fundamental interactions. And you also need to understand schema design, how you structure and organize your data, and how your back-end code will securely talk to these databases. Storing, retrieving, all that information your app handles. Choosing the right database. It often comes down to the nature of your data, really, how it needs to be accessed, how it relates.
And as you build out that powerful back end, security becomes really, really important. This is where the rubber meets the road for connecting everything securely, building trust. You'll need to understand authentication, verifying who a user is, using methods like JWT, JSON Web Tokens, for secure data transfer, or maybe OAuth for delegated authorization.
Critical stuff.
Then there's authorization, determining what that verified user is allowed to do, often managed through RBAC, role-based access control. Think of it like a bouncer checking your ID, that's authentication, then checking if you have a VIP pass for certain areas, that's authorization. And beyond user security, you're also learning to design and build the APIs themselves. We're talking RESTful APIs. They provide this stateless, standard way for different software parts to communicate over HTTP, predictable, scalable, and also GraphQL APIs, which offer a more flexible, sometimes more efficient way to query data compared to REST. Clients request exactly what they need, nothing more. These APIs are what let different parts of your app or even totally different applications talk to each other in a structured, reliable, and secure way.
Okay, so you've built your application. Now, getting it out into the world, the actual summit push, that's where DevOps and deployment come in. And what's fascinating here is how tools like Docker and concepts like CI/CD just revolutionize this whole process. Docker lets you containerize your application. You package your code and all its dependencies into this single isolated unit, like a self-contained box. This makes development, testing, deployment incredibly consistent. It gets rid of that classic, well, it works on my machine problem, because it runs in the exact same environment everywhere.
The classic problem.
Right. And then there's CI/CD, continuous integration, and continuous deployment. This is all about automation. It's a pipeline that automatically builds your code, runs tests, and deploys it every time changes are committed. It drastically reduces errors, speeds up delivery cycles, and ensures your application is pretty much always ready to go live. Tools like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, they're central here. And finally, you need to understand deploying to major cloud platforms: AWS, Heroku, Vercel, Netlify, making your application accessible globally, quickly and efficiently.
Getting the app out there is one thing, but making sure it's a good app. Robust, trustworthy, that's another challenge. Which brings us to those crucial modern development practices. This is like the essential gear for a safe descent, you could say. First, responsive web design. We touched on it, But it's not optional anymore. It's fundamental. Your app has to look and work perfectly on all screen sizes, consistent experience everywhere.
Absolutely table stakes now.
Then, web performance optimization. Strategies like lazy loading images, smart caching, code splitting, anything to make your site load faster, feel snappier. Nobody likes a slow website, right? Speed directly impacts whether users stick around. And security, again, absolutely critical. You need to know how to protect against common threats. XSS cross-site scripting, CSRF cross-site request forgery, SQL injection, letting attackers mess with your database, and always, always using HTTPS for secure communication. Non-negotiable. Finally, testing. This gives you confidence that your code actually works. You learn to write unit tests for small bits of code, integration tests for how components interact, and end-to-end tests to simulate a full user journey through the app. Tools like Jest, Mocha, Chai, Cypress become your best friends here. These practices, they aren't just nice to have, they are absolutely essential for any serious application, making it fast, safe, accessible, reliable. That's the next level.
And as you get more advanced, you start connecting different parts of the tech landscape. You realize applications rarely live in a bubble, which raises an important question. How do you build apps that don't just exist in isolation? How do they connect to the wider digital world? That's where integrating third-party APIs comes in. Think about adding payment gateways like Stripe or social logins or mapping services like Google Maps. These integrations expand your app's features massively without you having to build everything from scratch. Saves huge amounts of time and effort.
Yeah, leveraging what's already out there.
Yeah.
Smart.
Exactly. And we should probably revisit GraphQL here too. While REST is common, GraphQL offers this powerful, efficient alternative. Clients query exactly the data they need, nothing more, often in a single request. This can dramatically improve performance, reduce data transfer, especially for complex apps talking to multiple sources. It's a key tool for modern, efficient applications.
The web dev world just never stands still, does it? It's always evolving, like the landscape changing around you as you climb. So part of being a great full-stack dev is embracing that continuous learning, familiarizing yourself with cutting-edge tools. You'll want to stay updated on modern bundling and transpiling tools, things like Webpack, or maybe the newer, faster ones like Vite or Parcel, and Babel for compatibility. These tools process and optimize your code for the browser.
The build tooling is always shifting.
And you'll also want to explore headless CMS solutions. Strapic, Contentful, Sanity are popular examples. They separate your content management from how it's presented, gives you incredible flexibility, deliver content to websites, mobile apps, whatever, all from one place.
Very powerful architecture.
And for those really performance-critical tasks, where every millisecond counts, you might even look into WebAssembly. It lets you run code written in languages like C++, Rust, or go right in the browser at near-native speed, opens up possibilities for really intensive web apps.
All this knowledge is fantastic, but, knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied. That's why this whole roadmap really emphasizes practical application. You simply must be working on projects, building a portfolio of personal projects. Absolutely crucial. It shows potential employers your skills, your problem-solving approach, your passion. Way better than a resume.
Yeah, show, don't just tell.
Exactly. Beyond that, contributing to open source projects. Incredible way to learn from experienced devs, see professional code bases, and give back. And for real-world experience, maybe building a client base. Consider freelance work. Building things is where theory meets practice. It solidifies your skills, shows what you can do.
Absolutely. Prove you can not only climb, but build something great at the summit. And finally, it's not just what you know, it's also who you know. How you engage. The community aspect in web development is incredibly powerful. For growth, for staying inspired, following trends on places like Twitter, Dev.to, Medium, Stack Overflow keeps you in the loop, attending conferences, meetups, workshops. Fantastic for networking, meeting people, hearing about the latest stuff firsthand.
The connections are invaluable.
Plus, actively collaborating with other developers on projects, or even just talking through problems. It sharpens your skills, you learn from different perspectives. It really is a journey best shared.
So let's try to recap then. If you're aiming to become a proficient full-stack web developer in 2025, what are the critical technologies to really prioritize based on this deep dive? For the front end, definitely focus heavily on React. Learn Next.js. It's huge for server-side rendering with React. Master Tailwind CSS for styling efficiently. And embrace TypeScript for safer, more robust code. On the back end, dive into Node.js and Express.js, explore GraphQL for data querying. You might also consider Firebase as a backend as a service, or maybe look into Python with Django or even Go as alternatives for databases. PostgreSQL is a solid choice for relational data, MongoDB for NoSQL flexibility. Firebase offers great real-time database options too. Deployment. You really need to master Docker for containerization and get familiar with deploying on platforms like AWS, Netlify, and Vercel, and other essential tools. Understand bundlers like Webpack or Vite. Git is non-negotiable for version control, and get comfortable with testing using Jest and Cypress. Maybe even things like Nginx or Elasticsearch down the line.
Wow. You've just gained a huge head start on understanding what it truly takes to navigate the 2025 full-stack web development landscape. The roadmap is clear, and the journey, yeah, it's challenging, no doubt, but it's also incredibly rewarding. You're not just learning tools, you're developing this powerful problem-solving mindset.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, becoming a full stack developer isn't just about ticking off technologies on a list. It's about developing that creative problem solving approach and really committing to lifelong learning in this ever changing field. So the question for you is, what incredible challenge will you build the solution for first?